So we are back. We are
Yes,
back on this wonderful Saturday,
yes. What's up, guys? Hey, this is Janelle,
and I'm Kendall.
and you're listening to Black Culture Avenue. So, what's up, everyone? How's everyone's day doing? How's your day, Kendall? What are you doing? What's
It's
life?
it's it's a good day. It's really nice outside. It's a little chilly, but I'll take it. I'm probably gonna play basketball. We'll see. You know what? I had a funny. So I started playing basketball again. I used to play every day before the rapture, but I started playing again. But usually, like aside from maybe one or two or three times, usually I'm the only girl, which is not
Mhm,
uncommon. You're not going to find a whole lot of girls that play pickup basketball. But
mhm,
I had a weird scenario happen. Two weird scenarios happened to me last time, a few days ago when I played, and it put me in a grumpy mood. So I go to the park, the same park I always go to. I just found this park. It's a new park. It's great. It's always great pickup games. So have you ever played pickup basketball?
No, I don't play basketball.
So I'll just explain to you how it works. Pickup basketball is basically like regular basketball. It's just you kind of make up your own rules. It's basically it's the only difference in regular.
Oh,
So like so for example, in pickup basketball, in regular basketball, if you get fouled, the refs called it. If the refs didn't see it, you may get fouled, but it doesn't count. But in pickup basketball, if you feel like you got fouled, you call it and you get the ball back. It's just how it goes. If you
wow,
argue
that's
about
it.
it, yeah, if somebody really wants to dispute it, or someone's just calling like ridiculous stuff, then you just shoot for it. And then if you make it, you get the call you want. If they make it, they get the call they want. But basically, I usually don't. That's another thing. I usually don't call fouls because like I'm a girl, so it's like if I call a foul, even if someone like chops my head off, it's like, oh, she can't take the game. So I really rarely play call fouls. But anyway, so how it works is if you go to a court and you want to play, but there's already a game going on, you
Hmm.
find out who has next. That means who's playing next. So you ask like who has next. Now if they say no one, then you call next. And then you
Okay.
play the winner, right? Rise and fly like spades. It's just rise and fly. So these guys were getting together to play a game. Another guy called
Mhm.
next. I wanted to play. So I asked him if he had a team. He said no. I said, okay, you want to pick me up? He said yes. So another guy from a completely other team, the team that we were gonna play, he was not on the team with us. He's gonna say, "Oh, but those other guys said they had next," and I was like, "Okay, but that has nothing to do with me. He picked me up. You get to choose your team. It doesn't matter if someone calls next after you. If he has next, and he picks me up, I'm on his team. It's his choice who he picks up, right? So I guess the other guy didn't want to play against a girl. And so he changed the whole rules of pickup basketball. So he goes, "Oh, well, they said they wanted to play. So you guys should just shoot for it." And I said, "Why are we shooting for it? He picked me up. He can't pick his own team." And he was like, "Well, I just to make it fair." To make it fair to who? You just and then the guy didn't really push back because this is not a park. Some people come with people they know, and some people come with people that they don't. So he didn't know the other guys and he didn't know me, so it didn't make a difference to him. And I guess he was just like, all right, well, I guess just shoot for it. So then I'm aggravated because now I gotta shoot for something that I got, that I earned already. Okay, so I
Right.
shoot for it. Now the gag is I'm a shooter because when I play with guys, I can't play with what is called your back to the basket, like Shaq. Shaq played kind of with his back to the basket, just a big guy that kind of just drills it in. Now, when I play with girls, I'm usually the biggest, so I can do that. But when I play with guys, they're either my height, a little shorter, or a little taller. It's not a huge advantage, so I had to learn how to shoot. So I'm a shooter. So they made us shoot from the free throw line, which is literally that's my sweet spot, like mid range, right, 15 feet from the basket.
Mhm.
Okay, so obviously I made it, and the other guy had to wait. But I just found it funny how because I'm a girl, we have to change all the rules now. And the funny part is I could really understand it if he was on the guy's team and he was like, oh, I don't want to be on a team with a girl. I don't think, she can play. That would make sense to me. He was on the other team and he still didn't want to play with me. We ended up losing. We only had like 8 points, but I had four of them. So I was happy with that. And yeah. I don't get why guys do stuff that doesn't make sense. Then I had 4 of the 8 points. The other guy who had next watched the whole game. He watched me cook them, right? The other team. He watched
Okay.
he watched me block shots, he watched me get rebounds. He watched the other guy play terribly. He couldn't make a shot. He was shooting air balls. He couldn't play defense. He kept getting the ball stolen. He sucked. He still picked that guy up over me for the next game.
Wow. That's crazy.
Why
That's
do guys
so
do stuff like
biased
that?
though. Because it's I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know, guys that you are listening. I don't have a question for it because I don't play basketball. But I don't know. I feel like it's probably most likely like a bias thing with women. I don't know. Like they feel like, oh, like women can't do anything type of thing. I don't know.
Even though he
Or
watched me play.
yeah, I guess he just had a vendetta. I was just like kind of revenge.
Well, you
So it's
know
like,
what? Because
hey,
I
like
beat
next
him.
game, like, hey,
Yeah,
he's probably
that's
be like,
true.
hey, like, probably like, oh, yeah, you did a good job and all, but still, like, you
Yeah.
shouldn't have been on my team in the first place. So I'm gonna just pick him on the next one just to shut you up. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know
because
what
the
was going
reason
on
why
in
he
his
had to
mind.
wait next is because I made it over him. So maybe he was just mad because he didn't get to play in the first game. So I guess he would have rather lose. He would rather lose than because they got beat even worse that second game. So I
Dang.
don't know. And I'm not like a great basketball player. It's just I'm slower. So it's just like IQ things, like spacing and things that or like knowing where to be, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
to get the ball or to knowing what you do, not trying to do too much. So it gives me sometimes an advantage. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I just thought that was crazy. Then I go down to the other court and
Mm-hmm.
how the same rules, it's the same rules everywhere. Winner stays, rise and fly. So I show up, I say I want to play, they say cool. Then they say, oh, well, we should switch up the teams to make it fair. No, no, no. We're not changing all of the rules of basketball. Winner stays. If we get beat, we get beat. But we're not, oh, because here comes the vagina. So now we have to switch up all the rules. No. Now we did get our asses kicked, but I'll get my ass kicked honestly. I'm not gonna, whatever. Guys, guys just sometimes you guys are trash. In general, like guys are okay, but sometimes you guys do stuff that defies all logic. It doesn't even make any sense.
Oh my goodness. I have no comment when it comes to basketball because I don't
Not even basketball, but
play basketball.
have you just experienced something similar where you're just like completely underestimated or you're good at something, but because of some preconceived notion, you're not able to do it or people underestimate you even though they watch you be good at it?
Yeah.
Has that
Yeah.
happened to you before?
Yeah, it happened before. Like especially like it was just like playing football because I love to play football. I live in a family with a whole bunch of guys in my house and the love of football. So I got into like really liking football. So like playing flag football or like softball, stuff like that I usually play. And then like one time we had my this family reunion with my family and we playing football. And of course I have my cousins who are younger than me but like taller and bigger than me. So they just like talking trash and everything, like, oh, you can't tackle me, oh, you can't do this, blah blah blah. You can't catch the ball, you can't throw the ball, blah blah blah. But then I show their asses saying like, oh, why you going so hard? It's just a game. I'm like, no, you was talking junk. You was talking junk. So I'm gonna show you what you was wrong. If you're gonna talk junk to me, I'm gonna show you off, and then definitely show you wrong. That's just how I am. If you want to say something and saying like I can't do something, I'm just gonna put it right in your face and be like, you was wrong. That's it. And then like my cousin is like, oh, why are you going so hard? Why are you tackling so hard? It's just a game. We don't even have um um ask like those ankle pads, whatever, to be playing so hard. You shouldn't be playing so hard. No, you talk junk and I'm gonna show your ass. That's it. I'm not gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna take what you said and I'm gonna use it against you. That's it. So I get when it comes to football, I get that, but that's the same thing like with football in general. Like with guys, if they feel uncomfortable with a female playing their sport because they feel like, oh, now we, I guess they feel like, oh, now we gotta save her or we gotta protect her because she can't take the heat or she can't take the hurt or the pain like we do. So it's like, oh, they feel like they have to numb themselves or little themselves. I don't know
You know what I think?
to because it's a female involved, so it's like, oh, we can't really actually show them like show our true self or just show that they're, you know, the masculinity show out. I don't know. I don't know.
You know what I think?
That's a good guy question. What?
Yeah, if you're a guy, you listen, drop down in the comments and let us know. You know what I think too? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I noticed that when I play, if I play well, so in basketball there's different types of defense, but in park basketball you're playing what's called man to man. It's just you guard one person and they guard you or whatever, and that's just it.
Mm-hmm.
It's no zone or
Oh,
anything like that. So, but if I'm having a good game, I noticed like they will if I'm like cooking a guy, that's kind of what we call it. If I have like a few shots in a row, I get a rebound over him. Anything I do, they tease him worse because I'm a girl, the guy who's guarding me. So it's worse if a
really?
yeah, I've noticed that. Like they'll like, bro, you can't come on, man, you a baby, man. She's cooking you, man. Which they talk trash to each other anyway because it's basketball, but it's a little extra
Right.
because I'm a girl, and I kind of feel like that may be part of it too. But that's not my
Mm,
fault because I don't usually talk trash
right.
unless somebody really does something. And I don't try. I'm not out here trying to embarrass anybody. If I play well, I play well. If I make a shot, I'm not gonna say anything unless like you said something to make me mad. But that's not my fault. That's other guys. You gotta take that up with them.
Right. But my question is like, why do guys feel like if you're getting beat by a girl, that's like, oh, like that's horrible. Like that's the worst thing in the world to be beat by a girl. Like I don't understand that.
Because I guess they're conditioned to feel like they should be superior at everything. But they gotta like look at me when I come to play. Like you have to understand, I know I'm the only girl, so they have to. If I was them, I would sit back and think, all right, well, she has to be able to do something, otherwise she wouldn't come here. She has to have some level of skill, or she has to be able to do something, otherwise she would not come here. She would not just come here just to suck. So just how I would think. But I guess other guys don't see it like that, and then they're always surprised.
Mm.
Like or they don't want to play defense right away because they just assume I'm gonna suck and I'm just there just to be there. But it's like I'm married, so I'm not playing ball to get next to guys to try to catch a guy.
Right.
And basketball is not the type of sport where it's not like tennis where you can look cute. Like you look, it's rough. Like so you're not attracted to anybody trying to play basketball. So they have to figure out I'm there to play. Like I don't know. Speaking of crazy things that guys do, so we already told you guys last week that we were going to talk about Deliver Us from Eva this week. And I'm actually
Yeah.
really excited about this because sometimes me and Janelle have like these little mini conferences, phone calls, which is kind of how the show started, where we talk about
Mhm.
stuff and like kind of dissect things. And we have like huge differences of opinion with this movie. So this was fun. So Deliver Us from Eva is basically about a woman is she's played by Gabrielle Union. Her name is Eva, and she's like a health inspector. She has these four
Right.
younger sisters, um, and they all
Three,
well,
three, three,
you're right.
three, three.
There are four of them all together. She has three younger sisters, so they're all pretty close, abnormally close, I would say, but we'll get into that. And the three sisters all have men in their lives. Two are married, one's very close to being engaged, and the three brothers-in-law, let's call them, hate Eva because Eva's overbearing and makes them miserable. So they concoct this scheme to get a friend of theirs to basically make Eva fall in love with him and then move her away to get her out of their hair and then dump her and make her feel bad. So hilarity ensues when they concoct this scheme of this friend played by LL Cool J, who's Ray, who is this man that's supposed to make Eva fall in love with him. So that's basically the gist of the movie. Now,
Mhm.
I have a lot of issues with this. First of all, the concept, the
What's wrong with the
idea.
concept?
the idea that it's okay, but I guess, this was almost 20 years ago now. I think this movie came out in like 02, 03. The idea that this would be the concept of a romantic comedy that three men would get together and try to humiliate and ruin a woman's life because she's mean to them. Now, granted, Eva is terrible. She is like beyond mean to them. She is like demoralizing. Like she cuts them to the core. She takes every opportunity to be trash to them. But I have a problem. What do you think about the concept? I have such a huge problem with this as a concept.
I get the concept. I got the gist and the understanding of it. I understand from both sides of views. So it's not just like one. I got their reasoning. I got the guy's reasoning for it because Eva was a clockwalker. That's what she was. And she was getting to the point where she just took over their sister's mindset and guess you could say mind washed them into saying like, oh, well, Eva said, and it gave out this, attention, not thinking for themselves. They was just thinking about what Eva said and just going with what she said because she's the oldest and she's smart and she knows what she's talking about, but not realizing that the men, two of them are already married, so it's like why not have your own mindset, not your own way of thinking without having someone in your other ear saying, well, you should be doing this and that, and just going with that and not thinking for yourself. And it got tiring. So I understand where they was coming from. And I also got what they were saying, like, oh, like they're finding a guy that was somewhat compatible with her in a way that would actually show out like, hey, like this dude could probably handle her because how he moved with the ladies and he has an understanding of how women work for the most part and understand from that point, and it will break it easier so it will get her out of their hair. So I understand that point where it's just like, okay, if you're gonna have someone, because let's face it, Eva needed a man. Like
But
she was
see,
miserable.
I
No,
disagree.
no, no. I feel like she was miserable to a point where it's like she just clock blocked the whole entire sisters and their relationship and everything. Because if and within in the end, if the guys was really got to a point where it was really fed up and just broke up with their wives and stuff, they it would have been her fault because she kept on doing the same other stuff and everything else, and it would have messed up their relationship because there was no boundaries. And I feel like that's what it has to deal with that too. It was not a lot of boundaries when it came to those, even the women that were married. It's a
Yeah.
certain time when you're married that you can't take everything from other people because you don't know where their attentions are. So that part right there, that's what I'm saying. Like I understand where they were coming from because if from a guy's perspective, because it's just like I understand like if you are, especially the two are married already. If I married you, I married you. I didn't marry you to like think just listen to what your sister is saying all the time and just taking her point of view and not thinking for yourself and not worrying about like what we have. We have a relationship. So and not her. She doesn't have a relationship at that moment of time. And she's still broken up and sad about the relationship she did have and everything else. So why were you listening to someone who don't have anyone at that moment and it's basically miserable and you not realizing seeing that she's clock blocking you and you don't really know what her intentions are. It could be I feel like with her she wanted them to be miserable to the point where it could be like her. So the sisters could be wind up like her. Like she was basically training them to be like Eva. And that's not what the guys want because that's not who they married. They married the sisters that they were in the beginning. So why try to switch that and change that to be like someone else and not, not take that into consideration like, hey, like I married you. I didn't marry your sister. Like I'm not marrying your sister. I'm marrying you. So I understand when they're coming from. It's just like they needed to find some way to get her out of their hair so they could be relax and fine and going back to what relationship they already had from the beginning,
Well,
from
I
before Ava
disagree.
became.
I
What
disagree.
do you don't disagree with
I
that?
agree because their boundaries were totally out of whack. So I agree with that. But I disagree about trying to get her. They weren't just trying to get her out of their hair. They were trying to humiliate her and get her out of their hair. That was my main issue. Because at that
It was
first
a
meeting,
vendetta.
yeah, they had been. It wasn't just she's crossing the line and making my life harder. It's she's crossing the line, making my life harder, humiliating and emasculating me. Therefore, I want to humiliate her. That was my
Right.
issue with the concept. It's not just because if they just wanted to find her a nice man to take her mind off of the sisters, they could have done that. They could have met
They
Ray.
did. They did.
Yeah, they met a guy that was incompatible with her. But I'm saying they could have met Ray and been like, hey, we think you guys would get along based on what I know about you. Why don't you go out? But instead, they meet Ray and they say, hey, we're going to pay you to go out with our sister in law. We want you to make her fall in love with you. Then you tell her that you're leaving town. And then you dump her after you already got away from all her friends and family. And then Mike, one of the main one whose idea this was, the brother-in-law, he goes, it'll take her years to get over it. That's exactly what he said. It wasn't just about getting her away. It was like, I want to destroy her for years. That is twisted. But I think we're giving the guy
That is
too much. I think we're giving the guys
huh?
too much, and I think we're giving Eva too much. I think we're being too hard on both of them because the real big bad, the
It's the
worst
sisters.
characters are the sisters because they
Yes, they
allowed
are.
all of this. They
Yes,
allowed
they.
Eva to totally overrule them, not just the husbands. Eva overrules the sisters in their own house. She's
Right.
convincing one sister to wait to have a baby. That's not her decision.
Right.
She's
Right.
controlling the little sister, Jackie. She controls completely. And
Right.
then the middle sister, she's convincing her to not let the boyfriend stay over.
Right.
So the sisters are the reason why there's issues with Eva and the brothers-in-law because they set
Yeah. That's
absolutely no boundaries. They set no
right.
boundaries with the husband because they allowed the husband to well, they didn't know about the scheme. I won't say they allowed it because they didn't know about the scheme. But
Mhm.
they allowed Eva and their men to have this
Brother-in-law.
contentious relationship. Yeah, and it's not okay. They didn't
Right.
put their foot down. They didn't establish boundaries, and it's
Right.
it's ridiculous. And
Right.
so they're trash. The sisters are trash. I'm not even. I mean, the husbands they're trash too. And Eva is definitely trash behavior, the way she talks to people. But
Right.
they just let Eva just fight all their battles, whatever they didn't want to do. They're just like, well, Eva said, and it's just like, no, you
Right.
want to wait to have a baby, maybe because
Right.
you're unsure. Then you tell your
Right.
husband, don't say Eva said it, because then now he got beef
Right.
with her.
Right.
That yeah, I don't
Right.
know about that. They
That's the main person we should be all should be looking at is the sisters because
were trash.
they the
They
one who is
just
allowed that. And
they
it's true
allowed
because they really did allow stuff, especially the one with like with the middle sister. I understand where like she was coming from, like Eva was telling her like, hey, like, you know, to a certain extent, like, oh, like you shouldn't stay live in my house, whatever, or sleep over. I kind of understand she was saying that because they wasn't married, and I guess at the, it kept that boundary of like, if you want to, not saying like if you want to marry me, that you got to live with me type of thing, but it creates that thing like if you really serious about me, then what the next step to get to lay and bury me and doing all that stuff. I understand for a certain extent, but it got to extreme where it's just like it was it started up as it started out with good intentions, but then led up to bad because it was just like she didn't think about it of herself. She just said let her off like, oh, well, Eva said this. It wasn't like I feel that, I feel like we shouldn't live together if we're not married in the sense of, you know, and of living together because it just shows that we have some type of boundaries within our relationship too, within that, because I don't want you to get too comfortable living with me and not want to move on to the next step, which I'm trying to get to. Well,
But
instead of saying that to the person, to I guess her boyfriend at the time, saying that you putting Eva in a thing like, oh, where Eva said this, so I'm just sticking with that. That created a bad intention from his view, like, oh, like, here she go, Eva stop rocking me again, and it's just
yeah,
Eva this, Eva that, da 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 da, blah blah. Like, it's not like saying like, okay, this is how I actually feel. So it was just like, yes, in a way, Eva was manipulating them in a way, because it was just like, well, Eva said, Eva. And it was so like she was manipulating them because she's just giving them their voice. But at the same time, they let her manipulate her because they didn't voice their own opinion. They didn't have their own voice. They didn't have their own thinking of like, okay, I take her advice, but should I live with it or should I not take her advice? You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like you would do with your parents. Like, not, yeah, your parents will always give you advice just to better give like their best intentions for you and everything else. But at the same time, it's up to you to take that advice or not take that advice and learn it from yourself. And then, like, whatever, if you do take the advice, you take it as what your basically your understanding of that, not just saying, well, my mom said this, so I'm just going with that. Like, no, like, you have your own way of thinking of like, yes, I took my mom advice or my parents advice, but I'm taking it because I think, blah blah blah, or such and such, like, it would help benefit me and blah 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 blah. Not just saying like, well, my mom and dad said this and it's going on with it, not thinking of yourself. So that's what I'm saying, like, with that's what the whole big propaganda started with, that because it could have been avoided. And like, it could have been avoided when, first of all, the sisters wasn't basically manipulating them to think that they, like, just Eva is right and like she's smart and like she knows what she's talking about, and then that's it, and not thinking for themselves.
yeah,
And if they thought about themselves and say like, okay, I'm gonna take that advice or not take that advice, but I'm not gonna let it override me of what I think or what I feel or what I say, and creating that boundary that, yes, she's my sister. I don't have to listen to what everything she says, because at the end of the day, it's my life, whether she likes it or not. But it's, or like my husband or not, or boyfriend or not. But at the end of the day, I have to learn from my experience, my pace, my own thing, my own experience, versus
right,
just taking it off from somebody. Because then at the end of the day, you taking off somebody else, you're just gonna become that person, and you're gonna get to the point and deep embedded to the point where, like, you're not gonna become yourself. You're not gonna know who you are. Because the only person you know is someone else, and nobody's not gonna want to be with somebody who is someone else and not themselves. If that
right.
makes sense.
No, that does make
So
sense.
right. So that's why I feel like it was, the whole concept was just boundaries, like a whole bunch of boundaries with the sisters, with Eva, with the brother-in-law slash boyfriend-in-law, whatever. It was all about the boundaries, and then
Kept crossing
making it,
over and over
kept
again.
crossing it, right, and until it got to a point where it got emotionally scarred, like emotionally, and even into the marriages, relationships too. Like, it's got them into like not being themselves and not actually being comfortable talking about these issues or stuff that couples go through, or marriage people go through. Like, when they talk about kids and that stuff like that. Like, those type of conversations, you want to talk to your actual spouse, not someone outside who is not within that same bracket of experience to even tell you that. Because even if you
But
ask
hold on,
someone about
hold
what,
on. So going back to what you said, so about the middle sister. So the middle sister, her issue or whatever was causing contention in her relationship is that two things. That the four sisters, including Eva, they have this like bank account that they all have been putting money in for, I'm guessing, like 15 years or something like that. And so he
right,
wanted them to dissolve the and split it up. I don't know what he was gonna do with the money because he's not even
Right.
married to the middle sister, which whatever. The
Right.
other issue is that he wanted to stay the night, and the middle sister wasn't letting him. Why do you think? Because this is not like this comes up a lot. That's probably why they included it in the movie. Why do you think? What is women's fear about moving in with a guy first before getting married? Because me personally, I feel like I would have to live with a person first before marrying. Before marrying them, I need to know if I can live with them. Like me and Devon were living together for not a while, but I mean a few months before we got married. And then
Mhm.
even before he actually officially moved in, he stayed here all the time. He stayed the night. It
Mhm.
wasn't a thing. And it never made me think, oh, if he stays the night, he's not gonna marry me. Oh, if he moves in, he's not gonna marry me because why would he marry me if he already lives here? But it's like I don't know why women think about marriage like that. And I kind of feel like if you're with a guy, right, and in your
Mhm.
mind you're thinking, oh, he's not gonna marry me if I let him stay the night, or he's not gonna marry me if I let him move in, then your issue is you fear the guy won't marry you. And but that's the issue with his like integrity or whatever, or like your trust in him. Because if I was with a guy and I really believe like he does not want to be married to me, then there's no amount of not moving in that's gonna change that because the man just doesn't want to marry you. And so if he does marry you just to get whatever he wants to get, that's why he did it, not because he loves you. So what difference does it make if a man just marries you just so he can have sex or just to move in? Is that a man you want? So
No, but
why is that such a big why are women so afraid of that? I don't get it.
well, I understand that for me, not saying like I would like actually do that, like, because it's a long story with that with me and whoever. But I understand because it's just like there's been times and scenarios where the girl thinks you know the guy is serious and everything else, and and they move in and it creates that comfortability, and the guy's just like, oh well, I got everything I want, so why do I don't need to move, I don't need to do the next step because we're basically here. Why do I need to marry you when we're technically married? Like they'll say something like that, like
But
we're
then they
technically
weren't
married
gonna
already.
marry you
No,
anyway. This is what I'm
okay, but that's
saying.
yeah, but why would you? But it creates that comfortability to a man, like to not think about wanting to move even further, like be a better person, always leveling up to the next thing, the bigger, best thing, not just settling for anything, just settling right there. Like, okay, I'm comfortable around, so I'm just gonna stay right here. That's what some guys do. They just stay in one place and just settle. They don't want to move up. They don't want to grow to be like the better person that's up and to become a man, to be go thinking about always what's the next thing I'm gonna do, what's the next big thing I'm gonna do. It creates that with a woman just saying like if she has, especially if she has her own place herself, and a guy is moving in, he doesn't have his own place, but she has her own place. That's what I'm talking about. If she has her own place and he doesn't have his own place, and he's moving in with you, he gonna stay there and just be like, oh, I'm comfortable. Like I got a place to stay. I got food. She cooks for me.
But that's
She
what
do
I'm
all
saying.
this and then all
He
this and
wasn't
that.
gonna marry her
So
anyway. This is what I'm saying.
right, but she doesn't think that. She thinks it's gonna go somewhere.
But
A lot of women think that. I'm
I
just being
don't.
honest.
If
Like a
you
lot
with
of
a
women
guy,
think that like if you're gonna wanna be with somebody who you think is taking you serious and like somewhat shows like, oh, like he's taking you serious and you see that it's gonna go somewhere, and you guys move in together, and then next thing you know, he comfortable and it's like, well, I'm not going anywhere. Well, I don't have to marry you. You're already basically married, or like as an excuse, like, oh, we're already settled in. Like, why do I need to marry you for? Like, and this and that. So it creates that kind of like a comfortable settling type of mindset versus myself like, okay, I respect her boundaries. I understand where she's coming from and this and that. And I understand it because it also is just like most guys want to move in with a girl just like you said before, just have sex or whatever else, just
but see, that's
to,
the problem, Key.
keep on
And
with that.
I'm
That's a problem with, that some guys have, but that's something that they should be working on if they're really true about being with someone. But then that also has something to do with communication too, on both ends, because a guy could easily tell you, oh, like, yeah, I'm serious about you, and yeah, I'm thinking about marriage and everything else. And then you sitting there like, okay, we talked about it and everything, so you see it's going better. And like you see that, okay, like he's serious about this and that. And then next thing you know, you looking dumbfounded because like he ain't gonna do that ever. But he just said that just to stay in.
Yeah, but see, this
That
is, and I'm
that's
gonna
what I'm
get,
saying. That's where that.
I'm probably gonna get a little heat for this because I'm gonna have to come for the ladies a little hard on this because this shit is ridiculous. I'm sorry. So, and this is the problem. Women think about the way men think about marriage and the way women think about marriage is a problem. If you meet a guy and the way he talks about marriage is like he has to do all the fun stuff first and like it's a chore, like it's not. If you meet a man that's not enthusiastic about getting married or being married, you should not be with that person. If you're a
Right.
person that wants to get married and be enthusiastic about marriage.
Right.
Now there's some people will say no guy is. That's not true. Some are. Some know exactly what they want. They want the whole life. They want the whole marriage, kids, whatever. They want that. Now, is that
Right.
like overwhelmingly most guys? Probably not. But you have to be selective. You can't just be like,
Right.
"Oh, I don't want to be alone, so let me just be with this guy. Hopefully he'll
Right.
turn around, or hopefully he'll want to marry you. If you gotta beg somebody to marry you, that's not a marriage you want. You need to be by yourself.
Exactly.
I would
Yes.
rather be by myself than what is that one from Tyler Perry? He in some play he was like he'd rather be by himself with some cats and a dog and a book or something like that than to be laid up with somebody that don't want to be with you. If somebody
Right.
really, if a man really wants to be with you and marry you, that man will marry you. There's no
Right.
amount of waiting. There's no amount of
Mhm.
cooking, cleaning, sex, or
Right.
anything that will make a man marry you that does not already want to marry you. And
Exactly.
if you wait around for 5, 10, 15, 20 years waiting for a man to think you are worthy to be his wife, you are dumb. I am sorry. You are dumb and you need to be alone.
That's kind of harsh to say to
No,
somebody's
that
dumb,
because
but
that's dumb, Janelle. I'm not talking about if you
no,
both
no, no. I'm
just
saying
are
I
not ready for
understand. I
marriage.
understand. Right.
Like,
I
because
understand. I know what you're saying.
if you both just not ready, that's one thing you're building toward. But if y'all have been together since the year 2005, right? And y'all are adults, not like you're teenagers, because that makes the time different. But let's say you're an adult in 2005. Let's say you're 20 years old. Now we're 15, 16 years, depending on the month, in. Now you're 35 or 40, and you've been waiting for 15 years for a man to marry you, and you want to be
Mm.
married, not that you wanted to wait too. You want to be married, you waiting for something, you're a fool. Because
Mm.
you're settling for less than what you need and what you want. Just so you don't be by yourself.
Mm.
Find a man
Right.
that wants to marry you, that's enthusiastic about marriage. Stop trying to
Right.
truck these fools down the aisle that don't want to be married. Let them go and be 70 years old, and they be at Resorts Casino in the leisure suits, drinking Hennessy and talking. Let that type of guy be that type of guy. That's fine, because he'll find a
But
woman
that's
that will be cool
but
with that. But you're not that
but
type of
see
woman, so you need to be with somebody else. You're a fool.
but see
You
but
deserve.
that's how you discriminate a boy to a man. A boy would want to do all those things, just see sex and all that stuff. Like I'm not ready to be serious with somebody or want a commitment or just want to have fun. That's a boy mentality. A man mentality is like, oh, I want to have a career. I'm learning to be the best person of myself. I'm looking to settle down with someone that is my equal and blah 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 and all that other stuff. That's a man versus a boy. But a lot of times women don't. One thing I say, like, as a woman, we get stuck into this, like, sometimes we see like the boy and we want to change that boy to a man because he's everything, like not everything you want, but like some type of physical attraction or whatever it is that caught you in, and you want to stick with that and you want to try to change it into something to being a man, and you stay with that person because you feel like you're not going to find anyone better. And that's what women struggle, which we need to get out of that kind of mentality. Like, oh, like there's not another guy out there in the world that, I could find someone better to do. So I would just rather settle for what I have and pray that he will man up to marry me versus, saying like, I know my worth. I know I know what I want and he's not for it. Then, okay, I'm fine with that. And then be able to be okay to be alone too.
You
Being
know that,
okay with
yep.
being yourself and loving yourself to the point like, okay, it creates, I'm telling you, like, I'm living in it now. I'm speaking from experience because I'm living that right now of loving myself and taking care of myself and being okay with being myself. And it's a great feeling because it comes with knowing what you want for when the next guy comes. You know what you want, you know what you see, and it creates boundaries of, okay, like you could somewhat scout a boy to a man and when they're serious or not. And then it all comes with like communicating what you look forward to, your core goals, into what you want in your relationship, and if he's for that or if he's thinking the same way as you're thinking or having the same mentality of what you're thinking of, like, okay, I want something serious. Do you want having something serious? Do you think about having kids? Or you don't want kids? Stuff like that. It all comes with that. If from learning from yourself, but it takes you to take that step. It doesn't take, nobody's not going to do the work for you. Nobody's not going to tell you what to do and everything. Yeah, people want to tell you what to do and everything, but it's not going to be always going to be the right thing. The only way you know something is good is from yourself. You learning from yourself, learning what you like, your dislikes, what you're uncomfortable with as a certain extent. Whether you could be uncomfortable with certain things, but it could be a good thing because sometimes you settling with the same things or staying with that comfortability is not good for you either. But that's a whole nother story. But all I'm saying is women needs to take account sometimes and think about like, hey, like, why am I settling with this person when obviously he doesn't want what I want and he basically doesn't have the same mindset I want. Why stay with that person when I could find someone who will? But it's just that scarcity of saying like I won't find someone, or I think I won't find anyone better than the one I have. So that's when women just stay there because it's that fear of saying like, oh, I'm not gonna find anyone and everything else. Because as society, there's a lot of more women than it is men. So I understand that it's just like, okay, there's not a lot of men in this world and everything else, but you have to have the right mindset and just saying like, I am gonna find my person. Yeah, it might take some time, but that as you taking that time for yourself to learn things about you, doing things, having fun, and when the guy comes, he'll come at the right time. But don't force it or just stay or just feel like you have to be with one person and think that there's not a guy out there for you. There's a guy out there for you, or
For
a woman, if
everybody.
if for anybody, woman, man, whatever. It's someone out there for you. But also you have to take things, you gotta keep working on yourself also. Because a lot of relationships people don't work on themselves. They just jump in like, okay, somebody broke up with me. Okay, I'm on to the next one. And then it creates more issues within the next relationship and not healing from your first one, from the first breakup, not healing and taking this yourself. I'm like, okay, I understand why we did this, why we woke up. I understand, or like, I understand why it didn't work, blah, blah, blah. I understand it. Now I'm maybe in order to heal, move on, be able to take things, what I learned from it, and move on to the next one and not force it or rush into it just because I don't want to be alone. I feel like that's a lot of things that women go through. Like they are scared to be alone. Like it's a bad thing to be alone. Like I don't know who made that
Because that's like
mindset
the
or society made that mindset of saying like, oh, like you have to be with somebody or because it's the best thing, and if you're by yourself, something's wrong with you. No, there's nothing wrong with you when you're single and you find yourself out. There's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with being single to learn things about yourself, do things. And then when a person comes, that person will come. But don't force it like you have to be with someone all the time, all the time, all the time. Like you gotta have a person just to say I'm like, oh, I have someone. Oh, like there's nothing wrong with me because I have a relationship. No,
But
that's
you know
not
what that
how it
comes
works.
from? You know what that comes
What?
from? So historically, right? Obviously, women are in the workforce now and can be independent. But historically, how women gained security or like financial anything was through marriage. So you went from your
Right.
father's house to your husband's house. And so the only way that you could basically ensure to get like a decent husband to be able to take care of you was sort of like your looks.
Mm-hmm.
And men, the way they could secure like getting a wife was having money. So if you were by whatever society's standards considered unattractive, that lowered your prospects. And if you were what society considered to not have enough money or whatever, as a guy, that lowered your prospects. But a guy could have supported himself financially, working. But if you're in a scenario where you're a woman and nobody wants to marry you, you will like be poor and destitute unless some of your relatives take pity on you and like take you in as like a spinster is what they used to call it. But other than that, you cannot support yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
marriage was literally how people secured their lives. That's how women were able to support themselves and stay. Well, they didn't support themselves; their husbands supported them. That's how they were able to stay alive in their livelihood. So now, in the present day, where that's no longer apparent because women can work and support themselves, that mindset in society is still there. It's like it comes from old times of like, okay, marriage means like worth, or like having a relationship means worth, even though it doesn't translate in the present day the same way. It's more of a social thing. But the other thing I wanted to say about this movie, because I don't want to shade it too much. So I know I gave us ladies, I gave us a bit of heat. So I'm gonna bring it on back. I'm gonna show some love to my ladies. So another big theme in this movie, the reason why, now we gave Eva some because she is, a really difficult person, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason why she's like this. So in the movie, you get the backstory in the very beginning that Eva is the oldest of the four of them, and that when she was 18, their parents died, and she had to take care of all of her sisters, which they're not that big age gap. So I'm assuming maybe the youngest one is 12 or 13, and the other two are somewhere in the middle. So now she has to parent three teenagers as a teenager herself. She was in a relationship, she was engaged to be married, and basically the guy told her, you need to choose between me or your sisters. Like we can't raise teenagers, and she chose her sisters and he left her. And so now in the present day, she's thinking about all the things she sacrificed for them. She couldn't go, she couldn't get the job that she wanted. She wanted to be a horse trainer because she loved horses. But now she has three kids. She went from having no kids to three kids overnight. So now she has to work two jobs. One is a health inspector. I think she said she was a waitress too, to put herself through school, to put them through school. One of them became a doctor. One of them is still in school, the youngest one. The middle one owns a hair salon. She made all of that possible. And all
Mm-hmm.
three of them, even the youngest one who looked like she's still supposed to be in college or maybe a little older, all three of the sisters that she helped raise and she sacrificed her own love for, they all got the one thing she did not get, which was love.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, she resents the men. She treats the men like trash. She butts into their relationships. I don't think she realizes that that's why she's doing it. She's so bitter because it's like, damn, you guys, I made it possible for you to have the life you have, and I didn't even get to have it. And they still lean on her too much. They still
Mm-hmm.
require more mothering and things from her that she has to do. So that's why Eva's bitter. I'm not, we gave her a lot in the beginning, but a lot of times this is the mark of Black women. It's like we're tasked with all these responsibilities at these young ages, and it's like if you feel like you can't meet the challenge, then it's like, oh, you're weak, you're this, you're that. But and it's great that Black women are strong. It's amazing. I love being a strong Black
Yeah.
woman. Doesn't mean that you should have to bear the burdens of the world, but that's what's expected of us.
Right.
And if you don't, then you're weak. It's like, no, this is
Right.
abnormal. They needed therapy. An 18-year-old should not have been expected to raise 3 kids by herself with no help. They
Right.
needed to go to therapy to deal with the tragic sudden loss of their parents. It wasn't like they were sick and they had time to grieve. It was a car accident. So she had to become an adult instantly from being a teenager.
Mhm.
And it's like nobody cared about Eva. Nobody cared about how she had to sacrifice her own happiness, her love, her life, the job that she always dreamed that she wanted to have, just to give her sisters their dreams. And then you know what they do? They turn around and they force her to be the intermediary in their relationships, causing
Mhm.
conflict with their men, messing up the whole
Mhm.
family dynamic, using Eva whenever they want to disagree with the husbands themselves. You know what? The sisters really, they're the witches from the 3 of them. They're terrible. I'm so mad now that I'm thinking, poor Eva. She is not the villain of this. And then society and even like sometimes other like black women or black men put all this pressure and do all this stuff to black women, and then when black women are scarred or hurt or emotionally changed by the things we experience, they call us bitter. That's why Eva is like
Mhm.
that lady is not bitter. That lady is hurt. She needed therapy. And I know you said she needed a man. She didn't need no man. She just needed to come to terms with what she had to sacrifice. And that's what the whole thing with Ray helped her do. But it wasn't Ray. It's that she did not deal with the loss of that love very early and how she had to choose her sisters and change her whole life. She didn't really deal with any of that. And once she dealt with that, she stopped acting a fool.
You're right about that. I take back what I said about that.
Yeah, Eva, man. So Eva decides to go out with Ray after how they have to do that whole cat and mouse thing. They decide to go out and they have a rough first date, but it goes okay. But the problem is, the more they spend time with each other, the more Ray starts to like Eva. And this was
Mhm.
not in the brother-in-law's plan. He was supposed to basically love her and leave her. But when he actually starts to fall in love with her, it creates a problem because now
Mhm.
they're in a real relationship because he's in love with her. And now it's, instead of being everything Eva says, now Eva and Ray said this, Eva and Ray do
Mhm.
this. So now the
Right.
guys are mad because they're not living up to the standard of Ray. So I don't know. Do you think
It's a lot
that,
of comparisons.
huh?
It's a lot of comparisons. That's what
Again with the
it was.
sisters though.
Yeah, a lot of comparisons. Well, they did this. Well, they're doing this, so we should do this. And that creates a lot of comparison, which is a bad thing to have to compare to others. Especially women, we tend to do that. We compare ourselves to someone else, which is never a good thing to do. To compare yourself to someone else, because you don't know what they're going through, what the other person's going through, their story and everything else. So comparing yourself to someone else is never a good thing. And that's what another thing where, women go through too. I don't know if men go through that too. I don't know. They probably do in certain sense. I don't know. But I feel like as humans, we tend to do that. Even unconsciously, we tend to compare ourselves to someone else,
Yeah.
which is not okay.
I don't know. I feel like there can be some more boundaries. There's so many things wrong with this because then Ray sleeps with Eva. Now
Mm-hmm.
he's already in love with her at this point, so he's starting to feel guilty about spending time with her. But then he goes across that line and
Mm-hmm.
just so twisted. But after they sleep together, he basically tells the guys, the brothers-in-law, I'm not doing this anymore. I think I'm in love with her. I'm gonna tell her the truth. And then
Right.
hopefully he forgives me. So then they hatch this harebrained scheme to kidnap him because Eva has been offered a job in another city. I think they live in LA. She's
Right.
offered a
In
job in
Chicago.
Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
and but she had decided not to take it because she found Ray,
Right.
and he refused to just break up with her like they wanted, dog her out because he's in love with her at this point. So then they hatched this crazy scheme. One of them is a cop, the ringleader, Mike. So
Mhm.
they hatched this harebrained scheme to fake a car accident basically and tell Eva and everyone that Ray is dead. So they
Right.
kidnap him and keep him in a warehouse, and I guess they figure after Eva goes to Chicago, they'll let him out, and then he may run and tell her, but they'll just say they didn't know anything about it. It's crazy. So as you can see, as you probably know, it's predictable. He figures a way to get out. He shows up at the funeral. She has this big funeral for him. And then everything is revealed about the dirty trick that they pulled and the money and everything. And then she punches him in the face, which, by the way, I don't condone violence, but he deserved it.
Yeah, he
I'm
did.
one of those people. I hate to see movies or TV where women punch men or hit men because I kind of feel like it makes women in real life think it's okay. And if you don't want to get hit, you need to keep your hands to yourself. All people. That's how I feel. But he kind of
Right.
deserved a punch. But my question to you is: now everybody figures out what they have done, what the brothers-in-law have done, and what Ray has done, and the sister stopped speaking to them. They end up forgiving them. Is that something that's really forgivable in real life? I thought that was totally unforgivable.
Uh, I don't know. Like I said, two of them already married, so that's a lot. I feel like they would have to go to family therapy and stuff like that. But I guess it's because they they I guess I'm not saying for like if it's excuse anything, but I'm saying like the reason is it was stemming from the beginning why all this actually happened because of Eva and what she was doing within their relationship. If that didn't happen, this all this stuff wouldn't happen either. But I guess you could say like they forgave them because it's just like they had to take them to realize the reason why they did that in the first place, which was because Eva was making them miserable, clock blocking them, and all that stuff. And then I hope and realize I don't know they didn't really talk about it or anything like that. I hope they took initiative within themselves too that they was a problem with it actually happening the way it did because they need to take accountability for what they did by letting Eva stepping in and not
Yeah.
creating boundaries and stuff like that. So I hope they that's what part of the reason why they forgave him, forgave their men
I
because
hope so.
that I hope that's where it was because we don't ever know because it's a movie, so they have to rush in everything else. Then you're gonna explain everything, but I hope from like it was because they had to take accountability from what they did and what they did did to lead them to that point for them the reason why they did it and understand why they did it in the first place and then try to learn from it, take from it and move on and forgive but not forget at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I could have never. That was too that because if you really break it down, that is a terrible thing to do to somebody. To pay
Right.
somebody $5,000 to basically to humiliate them. And then Eva was in love with Ray, so she had this big funeral for him. She invited all her coworkers, everybody she knew was there to support her.
Mm-hmm.
They did that to her, and like that's humiliating. That's something you never get over, and that's what they wanted. You see, they got what they wanted in the end. He said that it'll take her forever to get over it. She's never gonna get over that, even though. So in the end, Ray he still wants to get back with Eva. He shows up at a job. He's bugging her. He goes and sells his house and quits his job to buy the horse that she loved, and then shows up on this horse at her job, and then she forgives him and they live happily ever after. That is ridiculous. Because now this is LA. How far was the horse? The horse lived on some ranch outside of the city. He rode the horse all the way there. He
I
was on
don't
the
know.
109 with the horse. That didn't make any
I
sense.
don't.
The brother-in-law was a cop. He falsified a police record. He's going to jail. The whole movie is just ridiculous. They're kidnapping folks
Yeah.
in warehouses. And so this brings me to the next point. So at the end, he shows up on the horse. He quit at his job and everything. What the hell is he gonna do with no job and no place to live and a big ass horse? And then they ride off into the sunset for what? To where?
I guess he knew for his job that he could always get that back. And then the house thing, I guess, I don't know. I don't know about the house part, but I feel like he knew that he would be able to find another job regardless, because he's good at what he does. So I feel like with that, he went. It wasn't really a worry of like trying to find another job. The house part, I don't know, because I don't know his financial thing, stability,
It
whatever.
would have been good
So
because
I don't know.
$5,000 to trick a sad, lonely woman into loving him for $5,000. They couldn't even give her 10. She wasn't even worth 10. You see how they lowball black women, even in
Yeah.
movies where they get fictionally manipulated. $5,000 plus expensive. That's a shame. I would be so petty. I would do everything in fives just because he did that to me. I would have five everything. And every time he said something, it's like $5,000. See, I'm petty. That's why I could never be comedies, because I would never get over that big ass horse. This movie, honestly, I don't want to bash it because it's a black movie. It's a fake classic, but there's some wrong stuff in it. Yeah, there's some stuff that's a problem, but overall, I laughed at it. It's a lot
Yeah,
of
that's
comedy
good.
stuff that happens in the middle, and you get a good laugh, but
Right.
and it has some gems too. There's a part which I think is really dope. So when before Ray decides to buy that horse, Eva really like has a conversation with him and basically says like, everybody thinks love is just this thing that just happens to you, and she was like, no, love is a choice. So
Mhm.
body and use what that love makes you do. So basically what she's saying is, it's like, you stole my choice to choose. When you decided to lie and deceive me, you stole my ability to know who you were and for me to choose to be with you. So are you mad because you really want to be with me, or you're mad because I figured out that you're trash and I chose not to forgive you, which she does end up forgiving him in the end. But I thought that was really interesting because I do think love is a choice. I don't think love is like, it's a choice in the sense where you choose to act. You can't control how you feel, but when you're with someone, it's a statement. You're making like a statement saying that this person's values, this for the way this person is, aligns with who I am, and I want to align my life with this person. So you do make a choice when you choose that person. That's why um when people get on social media and they're like, oh, I was married to this person and they weren't, they believed, like, let's just say people say, oh, this person's racist, but I'm not. If you marry a racist, you're a racist. You
Right.
like, you can't, it's okay with you, or it's not okay with you, but that person has a lot of money or that person does stuff for you, and that is more important than their integrity, which honestly says
Right.
a lot. Who you're with says a lot about who you are and what you value.
Mhm.
And so
Right.
I thought that was dope that she said that. I don't know. Do you think she ended up going to Chicago? Because I know she quit her job, but I don't. Do you think she stayed because of him, or he just went with her to Chicago?
No, remember he met with her twice. The first one is when she was saying her goodbyes at her old job and was on taking all her stuff to go to the Chicago. The second time is when he took the horse and went to Chicago. So I'm
Oh,
pretty
that was
sure.
Chicago. That's even more
Yeah,
ridiculous, Janelle. That was supposed to be
yeah,
Chicago.
that was Chicago.
Oh, cut it out.
She's already there. No, it's not. It's
Oh,
serious.
you
She's
know what?
already at Chicago,
So how
and
in
he
the
took the
hell
horse.
the horse gets Chicago? Because it's supposed to be the same horse. This is what I'm saying. If he just went out to Chicago and was like, "Hey, random horse, you want to get in the car or something like that?" I mean, that would be dumb, but
No,
that would make more sense. You mean to tell me he took a big ass horse from California to Chicago so he could ride his bald headed ass down the street? Yeah.
no, he rode it into her
Janelle,
job.
are you kidding? Are you playing with? Get off my line! I can't believe that. That's so silly. Black people,
No,
we gotta do better. because I
You
don't
didn't
want
realize
listen,
that?
I enjoy watching this movie, but that is a crime of epic proportions. That is unforgivable.
You didn't realize that she was already
No,
in
Janelle, you know
Chicago?
I didn't realize that.
See, you need to observe more when you watching movies to know
I
these type
didn't
of things.
I
It's the
never
second
I never
time.
knew where she was supposed to be. I just figured she was at work still. I can't believe that is, you know what?
Yeah, she was already working at her job already.
So he showed up at her new job with mess,
Yes,
with drama at her
yes.
new job.
Not drama, but he told her like I'm not gonna stop until you talk to me and we at least try to hash it out. I guess if he was trying to find closure or whatever it is, but he was not gonna stop because he loves her and that he couldn't live without her. I guess so. He was not gonna stop until
A more realistic ending would have been had she told him
'cause-
to kick rocks and then he had to ride that horse. Listen, he didn't have a place to stay and he didn't have a job, so the horse could have kept him warm and he could have used
Mm.
the horse's tail for like blankets and stuff like that. I, that wore me
But it
out.
was just
That took all the
also
energy out of my body. That is silly. That is silly as hell.
he knew that
Romantic comedies got to do better. That's egregious.
but also he knew that she still had feelings for him, so that's why he kept on coming too.
How did the horse get there? Is anybody gonna? Did they drive? How many hours is that?
I don't
Isn't
know. I
Chicago
don't
like?
know.
Let's see. Ohio is like 8 hours from here, so that would make Chicago what, like 15 hours from New York. So from
Probably.
California,
Probably.
what is it?
I don't know.
Because would you have to drive through the South first to come back?
Mhm.
Shame, for shame.
I
But you
don't
know
know.
what?
I
So
don't know.
support black movies. I don't know. This movie is probably the silliest one we reviewed so far, but in its silliness, like it's enjoyable because it's so problematic that it forces us to have real life discussions about like the stuff that affects black people because it's reflected
Mhm.
in the film. So the issue with like not having boundaries and like how black women are called bitter and stuff. You know what?
Mhm.
This movie is not stupid. It's revolutionary. It's so silly that it's forward thinking. I just realized that. It's like Good
Yeah.
Times. Do you know how Good Times sometimes is so tone deaf that it's on perfect pitch? Have you ever watched one of those episodes of Good Times? We have to review that
Mhm.
too. Where it makes so little sense that it's perfectly understandable. That's what this
Yeah.
is. This is, yeah. Shout out to whoever made this movie. They made it, yeah. It's good. I can't that's those That's what my final thoughts. This is revolutionary because it's so bad. It forces us. It has all these crazy extreme archetypes. Eva is such a ridiculous character in the beginning. She's so rude and so unnecessarily nasty that it forces you to ask why. Because if she was just minorly passive aggressive or whatever, you would just be like, oh, she got an attitude. But she's so rude to people and cuts people so deep that you have to ask, well, wait, she went through some things. She has some trauma. Let me figure out what happened to this lady. Yeah. Shout out to who, I don't know who directed that. That was the revolution. See, black people, we are so talented. Even when we make foolishness, it's a masterpiece. Even when we have big ass
What?
horses go from California to Chicago, it's incredible.
Kindle.
Yeah,
It's a movie.
yeah, but it's
Not
silly. But
everything is
it's
going
so
to be
silly. It's great.
explained. Not everything is going to be explained. That's when your imagination comes in. When it comes to stuff like that, your imagination comes within that. Like, okay, he probably was like went days, like he went to this one and then whatever, and had a campfire probably, and then moved on, woke up the next day, and then run off from there and see how far he
Hold
can
on,
go
you
from
think he
there and
rode
then
the
stop.
horse all the way to California? I mean, all the
No,
way to Chicago?
I'm saying that could be one scenario, or
Oh my
he had
God.
no, or listen, he
All
probably
right.
had like a hot, what they call those things, like when you get picked up from the side or whatever,
Hiker?
on like high hitchhiker, whatever it's called. Probably had that with the horse, and then went from there. And then whenever the person like, okay, this is how far we're gonna go, you're gonna have to find someone else. And he probably did like that. It could be a whole bunch of other scenarios. That's what I'm saying. It's a movie. Not everything is gonna be explained when it comes to movies. It's just you let your imagination sit in there and
They should have
put
explained that.
in your imagination, whatever imagination you put into those missing pieces within the movie, so you could better understand how it probably transition or whatever else. That's what movies are. Not all movies has everything bit to bit to the point where it's just like everything. It makes sense and everything, or it's very realistic. Not all movies are realistic, Kendall.
I know, but
Not
that's what I like.
everything is not gonna see. That's the problem.
I
And like
know.
me, I have imagination, so I could think of many scenarios and one with a movie and everything, and I could just be content with that, and I'll be fine because it's not a big deal because it's a movie. At the end of the day, you can't take movies too serious to the point it's like it has to make sense to what's going in now because it won't, because that's not realistic. Not all movies are very realistic. It's a movie at the end of the day, just like a show. It's a show. It's not
True.
anything realistic or anything within that point. So you can't take it too serious to the point it's like you gotta figure out this is that and why they didn't explain it. That's those blank pieces or those broken spots or like blank pieces to the movie. That's for you to imagine and think about those things, stuff like that. If you wanna get a better understanding on it or fill in those missing blank pieces to the story from your imagination. That's what it's there to open your creativity, your imagination. In essence, I feel when movies are like that, it's
I
just
guess.
to create that imagination.
So you know what we
There's
have to
nothing
talk
wrong with
about
that.
last, right? You know what we have to talk about last.
Yeah, that last part, which I
So
don't
in the
understand.
movie, right? All throughout the movie, we didn't mention him before because he's not really a big character. It just doesn't really matter. But the middle sister owns a hair salon, and then there's a gay guy who works there, and he has some funny lines. He says some stuff. He's like a funny side character. There's also Kim Whitley. She's in it. Also works there, funny side character. But
Mm.
if you watch the movie all the way through, the credits and everything roll, the music, there's an ending scene like Marvel. There's an ending scene with the gay guy from the shop, and he's talking completely different than he is in the shop, and he's calling his girlfriend on the phone and talking to her. And then you find out that he's pretending to be gay to work
Yeah,
at the salon until he gets his own salon. And it's just like that blew my mind because I don't know what they were trying to say in that movie. I don't know what the point
yeah.
of that. What do you think? What was the point of that scene? Are you really
I
thinking that
don't know.
hairdressers pretending to be gay for clients?
I don't know. I feel like I don't know because I don't know. I don't know. I feel like it's probably they put that in there because it's probably still that like men are not really supposed to do feminine, which goes within that. Like it's double standard. Like straight men are not, into doing hair or makeup and everything else or doing things for women in that sense. Like you have to be gay. Like there's no it's or buts about it. You're gay if you're doing stuff for like what women want to do or what women does. If you're straight, that's out of whack. Like nobody's not hearing that. Like you're saying that you're straight, they won't believe you that you're straight. They just probably just saying like you're automatically gay and that's it. And I think that's probably what it was. Honestly, I feel like that's probably what it was. Just to put that out there, like there are straight men out there that are doing things that like is out of the north that what women does, like with hair and makeup and clothes and everything else. Like it's only a gay guy standpoint when there's probably men out there that are straight who does stuff like that, but they're not being taken seriously because they don't believe straight men would do stuff like that. Like they are not into doing things that a gay guy would do. So they just put that like, oh, they're not gonna believe me. They're not gonna really trust that I'm straight, or they're not gonna take me seriously. So let me just say gay for, even though I'm not gay. I know I'm not gay, but being that I love to do this X, Y, and Z. I love to do hair. I love to do women's hair, or I love to do makeup, or I like to do women fashion, or whatever it is. They're not gonna take me seriously. So the only way they do take someone that's seriously to a certain extent is a gay dude.
You know what?
So
That's
I feel
true.
like that's probably what it is.
Yeah.
No.
I think it's two things. I think I answered my own question now that when I was hearing you talking, now that I'm thinking about it. I feel like two things are probably happening. I feel like you're right. So he probably was just so tired of people just either assuming he was gay just because he
Mm-hmm.
didn't care. He probably got tired of people asking questions about it, so he thought it would be easier to just sort of pretend. And then the other thing
Mm-hmm.
too, women in general, and this is something, women in general are way more comfortable in certain situations around gay men than straight men.
Mm.
Like
Right.
in a setting like that where they're talking about their personal lives, men, and like they're talking about, like, that's like a woman's sanctuary, like the beauty shop. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you may find a straight man in there if he's coming to like drop off his daughter or pick up his wife or whatever, but that's really for straight women. And gay men as well just
Mm-hmm.
sort of get a pass, and it's not like bizarre for him to be there. It's very normal. But if he was like a straight man in there, they would not have been as comfortable with him.
Right.
And they wouldn't have been as comfortable with him. It would have been like an immediate, like an on guard thing. And then
Mm-hmm.
also, other straight men probably wouldn't have liked the idea of their wife or their girlfriend like going to a guy that could be trying to pick them up, because that's a very
Right.
intimate thing. Like somebody's doing your hair, you spend a lot of time with them, you become friends. I don't think their guys would have been cool with that, and I think they would
Right.
have been more on guard too. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was very interesting. That was a weird. And I've watched this movie so many times as a kid. I never watched that ending scene, so it surprised me when it was there. When I just left Netflix on, I just didn't turn it off when it ended, and it just popped up. And I thought that was
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. Yeah, shout out to, yeah. See, this movie drops gems. In my final thoughts, I will say that this movie drops gems. It's almost so silly that it's like makes perfect sense. And yeah, that was good. I enjoyed it. What about you? Final thoughts?
Yeah, Final Door for me is the same thing. Just like I don't think it's silly. I just feel like it touched on a lot of bases on things that Black people go through, men and women go through, and don't really take the time to like talk about these things within each other and um with the same, whether it's with the same person, you know, same gender or opposite gender, wherever it is, that those conversations are not being talked about or not being explained, or learning from different perspectives also, which that movie did explain that too, like taking people's perspective and what they're going through and understand why they feel the way they feel, and vice versa with like understanding what what the other person might go through, and you create that character development of learning from each character. That's what I said for me with this movie. I understand from both sides. I understand what the women was going through, and I understand what the guys was, why they felt the way they felt, and I understand why the women felt what they felt. That's why I was like neutral within this movie, and I understand it, and it. I had no complaints because it actually does bring up a lot of stuff that's still going on now,
Yeah.
like in this world. So always like movies like this that's like in way 20 years and older, and you're watching it and it's still relevant to today. That's how you know it's a great movie, because you could get to learn new things, or like open up your mind to think like, okay, like I understand what this person's perspective is, or I understand why he or she might think this way, or stuff like that. It brings up and opens you up into understanding, or try to get an understanding of what people's perspective is, because your perspective could totally differ from mine. And I feel like that's where a lot of argument comes from, because that two people have different perspectives, but it's just like it gets to the point where it gets bad, where it's just like when it comes to perspectives, it's just that one person thinks their perspective is right and the other person is wrong, and that's it. And doesn't give the other person a chance to realize like this is what they was coming from, and that's why they reacted or how they feel on that point. So it brings up, a lot of things within this movie, like learning for perspective, boundaries, and understanding, communicating, and trusting, and learn to love again, and all this other stuff. It brings out a whole lot of topics that we even talked about today. But like it brings out a whole lot of stuff that people are going through still today in this 2021. So it's movies like that are still relevant today. You could tell it's a great movie because it's still relevant and people are still going and having situations or stuff they're going through now like this. So I always like with this movie. Yes, it was funny. It was really funny, but it's a classic for me. It's a really good movie that it talks about a whole lot of stuff, gives you a learning aspect too. So I have no complaints or anything about this movie. I love this movie. Those who probably haven't watched or haven't heard of it, I recommend you watch it. And yeah, that's my final thought.
Yeah, you said a word. I mean, you kind of wrapped everything up. There's really nothing left for me to say. I don't know if I say I have no complaints, because I always have complaints about stuff. But yeah, good movie. It sparked up a good conversation. I'm looking forward to next week when we dive into the MCU, the Moesha Cinematic Universe. I'm excited about that. The first one, obviously, we're gonna start off with Moesha because that's what came out first. I'm excited about that. Drop down in the comments and let us know what you thought about Deliver Us from Eva. If I was bugging, if I was being too hard on the movie, or you agree with Janelle. And yeah, stay tuned for next week.
Yes, I
Thank
feel
you
like
for
we should
listening.
do like a team thing too.
We should do what?
Like a team thing, like Team Janelle, Team
Oh
Kendall.
yeah. If you
That'd
guys,
be
yeah, let
good.
us know. Let us know if you agree with me or you agree with Janelle. I don't know. Us maybe somewhere in the middle. Um, but yeah, Black
Yeah.
Culture Avenue. We out.
Yes. Peace.